and welcome to this webinar around really aimed at those that are returning to work. How can you reframe your confidence and get a bit of an idea to think about what is your career direction going to be? I am also here in Melbourne, Australia, and it is a very rainy day as well. And I think the rain's just given me a little bit of a cold. So I'm just going to caveat that if I do go into a bit of a coughing fit, I apologize. I'll take some water and we'll continue on here as well. Of course, please feel free to ask any questions, as Kate has put in into the chat, and we'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but I will be keeping an eye on the Q&A function as well as the chat, just to see if there are any questions that I can answer along the way as well. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. We'll get into it. We've only got an hour and there's so much I want to get through with you today. So I'd love to just take us through, well, firstly, a bit of an acknowledgement of country from our side as well. So I'd love to respectfully acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as Australia's first people and the traditional custodians of the lands that we are all living and working on. For me, as I mentioned, I'm based in Melbourne and I am on the lands of the Wurundjeri and Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I can see that we are from all over the world here today, from the US and Singapore and here in Australia as well. So I do extend my acknowledgement and respects to any elders across the seas as well, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging here too. So just quickly before we get into it, I'd love just to give a really quick introduction to who we are. We are the Dream Collective. It's a global diversity and inclusion consultancy founded by Sarah Lou in 2012, and we are a passionate advocate for women in leadership and also furthering diversity and inclusion practices in corporate culture. And part of what we have done is created this SheReturns initiative, which is really targeted at supporting women who've had a career break return back into the workforce. And we're partnering with a number of organizations in the tech industry, but also outside of that as well, to support them with their return to work journey. And so today's webinar is a little bit of a part of what we do in terms of really supporting you as you start to think about on this journey. And I'm going to share a little bit about my story as well. And for those that are keen to be part of SheReturns, we have a platform where you'll get access to previous recordings and webinars that we've done, the community of women, as well as extra resources and materials that will help you as you start this return to work journey again. So please, we'll pop that into the chat, but I'll give you some more information at the end as well. So just to let you know what we're going to be going through today, a fair few things to go through, but really I wanted to focus this hour that we have today on really thinking about, for those, no matter where you are on your return to work journey, and no matter how long your career break has been, like giving a bit of an update and around why now is actually a really good time to return to work, and to help you to start thinking about, for those that are on that journey, what might be your potential career direction as you start to make your way back into paid employment as well. Then we'll spend some time thinking about, when we are returning to work, what is the top 3 challenges that might come in our way? And we'll unpack some of them, but I want to focus today's webinar really around how do we reframe confidence. And so I will help us to think about, some of the systemic challenges that we might have as we start to go on this journey, but what are some of the more personal obstacles that might come in the way, and how can we start to reframe some of them? And then finally, a little bit of an exercise to thinking about, as you've gone through this, how can you start to communicate your career break as you start to have conversations with this hopefully newfound confidence that you might have, and start your the next steps there for you as well. So as I mentioned, any questions, please feel free to pop it into the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that as we go along as well. So I wanted to start off here and just to give a bit of a context to what we are actually talking about when we're thinking about, you know, what is a career break or a career pause, as we might want to call it as well. And so, you know, typically it is extended time away from the workforce or from paid employment. It can be anywhere from about a year to up to 20 to 30 years away from the workforce as well, which means that the experiences of the people who have taken career breaks were very varied. But what we do find is that a lot of the challenges that women face in particular are quite common amongst them, no matter how long that career break has actually been as well. You know, a career break is the most common with women who have caregiving responsibilities, typically for those that, you know, do opt out of the paid workforce, potentially to start families. But these caregiving responsibilities, particularly if we think about over the last couple of years, could include things like looking after our elderly parents or relatives or other loved ones as well. You know, there'll be other reasons to why women opt out of the workforce, including things like mental health, which is a really big one at the moment, travel, study, excuse me. Sometimes it could even be a lack of family support or even just a supportive work environment as being some of the reasons why women decide to take a little bit of a break. And I'd actually love to hear from you as well as I'm going through this. You know, if you want to share with us, pop down, you know, if you are taking a career break at the moment or career pause, how long has it been? Maybe if you want to share what was your reason for taking the break, and well, I'd love to kind of get an understanding of where everyone is at in this too. So I'm going to try and make this as interactive as possible, but I'd love to hear from you. How long has it been since you were in the paid workforce? And, you know, what was the reason as well? And they'll give me a bit of an idea as to where everyone is at the moment. And this could be for you. You might have taken multiple career breaks in your lifetime as well. I know I have, and I'm going to share my story with you in a little bit too. So I'll just keep an eye on the chat, but please feel free to pop that down as we go along. Just a note here is that, you know, we saw a lot of research and we saw a lot of numbers, particularly in the pandemic over the last few years. And even now, as we're not necessarily quite, I don't know, COVID normal or post-pandemic, we're in this really transition phase as well, where we did see in that time the high proportion of women leaving the workforce was much, much higher than men because of these caregiving responsibilities. Anyone who was here in Melbourne and was homeschooling children over the last 2 years, put your hand up, because I hear you, I feel you as well. But you know, there have been a lot of reasons why women had to step away from the workforce that potentially may have not been a reason prior to the pandemic. And so the reasons and some of the strategies and even some of the challenges and mindsets from what we would have thought about as we were returning to work pre-pandemic has actually changed. And I want to share a little bit about that in the next slide when I talk about, despite some of the challenges, what are some of the opportunities that we can actually take as well. And that last bit there is that actually, you know, despite a high proportion of women taking career breaks over their lifetime, 85% of women we have found actually want to return or have a plan to return back to work as well. So there is a great number of us that are looking to return to work. So this webinar is really to help you as you start to make that transition through and embark on that return to work journey. And I can see here, thank you so much for sharing in the chat, currently on your career break, currently upskilling with Google through Coursera, 11 years in marketing, been on a break for the last 7 years, looking back to get to the workforce. Yep, I hear that one. 3 years, yeah, car accident and consequent medical condition. Yeah, absolutely. Chronic health illnesses particularly is another huge reason for why a lot of us do take career breaks there. And I'm sure that you're looking for a way to come back to a paid employment that is going to be working for you and your lifestyle as well there, Anasia. Already more than 6 years since you arrived. Yes, 4 months of caregiving of elderly parents. Yep, I hear it. Thank you for sharing. as well. 10 years since you came to Australia, last 4 years looking after your 4-year-old daughter as well. Yeah, thank you also for sharing that as well. You can see such a varied reasons. A lot of it is caregiving reasons, but there are so many different reasons why, and which means that we are all coming into this journey from very different mindsets and different challenges. And so some of the things I will be sharing with you are common for all of us. But of course, there'll be those unique and more personal challenges that you will have, that hopefully I'll be able to give you a little bit of a framework into how you can start to think about some of the things you've gone through and reframe them in a way that will help you move forward in your return to work journey. So let me share my story as well. So as I mentioned, my name is Sugandha, or Sig. Currently, I am the Senior Diversity and Inclusion Consultant here with the Dream Collective. But you can see here underneath that I am what I've got in brackets, Master of Professional Pivots. So I'm in my late 30s. I have now gone on to probably my 6th career so far, if I'm counting. Probably more, but if I don't count my freelance stuff, probably about 6th career. And I've been picking up experiences and skills that have made me a little bit of what you might call a little bit of a Jill of all trades, or as my friend likes to call herself, and I've totally stole from her, is a master of professional pivots. Part of that is related to my own personality of wanting to try different things and do lots of things. But part of it is also due to circumstances as well. So I started my career in Big Four consulting, and I was going my way up through the corporate ranks until I got to a point where I had to make a choice. And that was either to find a job with better work-life balance, go for promotion, or start a family. And I realized for me at that moment that I never wanted my work to get in the way of my life. And I had honestly no idea how long it would take me to start a family, but I went down that route, which eventually resulted in me with a beautiful son. We moved to the UK when he was 4.5 months, and I quit my job while I was on maternity leave as well, knowing I never wanted to go back to that career. And so since then, I had my daughter as well. So I've got 2 children. And I started my own business, which was kind of on and off as I was looking after the kids. And I got to a point, and we had moved back to Melbourne by that stage, but I got really tired of talking to toddlers and people on the internet. So I had my own coaching and consulting business, and I decided to go back to a job. And for me, I'd been out of the workforce probably 4 years at that point. And it was quite a hard transition for me to think about. Particularly, I had been overseas. I was looking to move into an industry which was so different to where I had been before. And all of the challenges that I felt were so overwhelming, and I didn't have any idea how to start this journey as well. I thought that I was too old, that, people I had worked with were now literally going to be my boss if I went back to my old job. So all of these things were going through my head, and I found a role that suited me for that point in time, which then basically ended up being a bit of a stepping stone and a point for me to continue on the career that I've had, which has now led me to where I am now today as well. But what I wanted to share with you was, in that time when I did take time off from that paid employment, it was really a chance for me to revisit my values. Like I said, I quit my job while I was on maternity leave, which I absolutely probably don't endorse or recommend, but I've always had very low impulse control and no job to go to as well. But what it did give me was an opportunity to rest, for one, to come back and revisit my values, and for me to think about, where do I want to go next? So the first thing that I want you to know and to share with you is that for those that are in a career break, and again, no matter where you are on your journey, this is an amazing time for you to actually take the time to pause and reflect and to think about, where do you actually want to go next as well. And I'm going to share one way of how you can start to get some clarity on your career direction, on where you want to go. And then we'll have some follow-up webinars from the SheReturns thing around how do you then start to take some of your transferable skills into new industries, particularly tech as well. But for today, I'll give you a little bit of an insight on how you can start to think about, particularly if you don't have the clarity of where you want to go, how you can start that journey as well. So some of the questions I want you to think about, is the career that I had before, is that where I want to be now? What are the things that are important to me? Have my values changed? Have my priorities changed? What are my non-negotiables when it comes to thinking about the kind of work that I want to do and the career that I want to have? Those things are going to give you clues into where is it that you want to go and what kind of roles will be best suited for you as well. So, despite all of this, and, it sounds very rosy and all of that, and, most of us, as we start to think about our return to work journey, we want to be feeling like this. We want to be feeling pumped and ready and confident and excited and empowered. However, what's the reality? And I'd love for you to pop into the chat. How are you feeling right now? Are you feeling excited? And you might be. Absolutely. But how do you feel when you think about this return to work journey? Are you feeling overwhelmed, excited, kind of nervous? I'd love to hear how you're feeling now. Trepidation, confused, scared, overwhelmed, stalled. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you've got a bit of excitement. So I love that positive thinking in there still. Lost, overwhelmed. Yes. Confident. Yeah, thank you, Edzi there. Thank you. Nervous, be entering a new industry. So also excited. Very cool. Oh, sad and broken because I didn't get any support from husband. I hear you as well. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges that women in particular do face. And I'll talk about those challenges in a minute. Hopeful. Yep. And the reason I'm asking you this as well is because I can see, while there are some positive emotions in there, and there will always be a little bit of a mix of these emotions. And it is just worth noticing how you're feeling now, because this journey will have its ups and downs, and knowing that it's totally normal to be feeling a little bit like this as we start on this journey. But know that this is just for now as well, and it will change as you start to go through this journey and start to build that confidence in yourself as well. So as we start to think about this, when you're feeling a little bit vulnerable, when you're feeling a little bit uncertain, what are some of the biggest challenges that might show up when you are going on this journey? And there are many, but I wanted to share with you the top 3, although you might have to read behind the lines to identify it. But the top 3 that we have noticed from just our own experiences, but by doing a lot of market research from women that are looking to return back into paid employment, is one is that lack of confidence. And I can see it through how the feelings are coming out through what you're sharing with me on the chat. Second is that lack of clarity. And the third is that lack of community support, whether that's personally or professionally. And so these are really common, but also within your control to overcome as well, which is the good thing about it. And if I just go into each one of them really briefly, if you are feeling like you have a lack of confidence in your skills in particular, you might have written things like, I can't compete in today's job market, or I'm too rusty and out of practice, or I've lost my touch, or even thinking about, I can see here how companies might consider career gaps as well. But what I want to say to you, firstly, you haven't actually lost any skills during your career break. In fact, what you have found is additional life experiences that will be beneficial to the role that you will be bringing and to the organizations that you are going to be part of as well. And as the world of work changes, and in our next webinar, I'll talk a little bit about the future of work skills and transferable skills. But as a kind of a precursor to that, I want you to know that your career break and the career pause that you had, even if you were a stay-at-home parent with your children, actually has a lot of skills that are highly desirable for companies that are looking for workers for the future of work. And so these are things like problem solving. And if you are a parent, you know that you have to do that on a daily basis. Conflict management, empathy, relationship building, adaptability. These skills are highly desirable for companies that are looking to bring into the workforce. Technical skills, of course, but technical skills can be learned. These skills that you have already experienced as part of your career break, whether you were volunteering, whether you were looking after loved ones, whether you were looking after yourself, resilience, for example, they can't be taught. And so these are the skills that you can take confidence in, that you know are going to be really well regarded for companies as they look for people to fill the roles that they are trying to fill as well. You know, it can feel very real, and some of the mindset beliefs that we tell ourselves, but we'll touch on this in a little bit as well. The second here, you know, this lack of clarity, this challenge really plagues people who are looking to return to work, but also those that might be looking for a bit of a career pivot as well. So if you're someone like me that didn't want to go back to the job that they had before, the industry that they wanted, and were looking to pivot into something else, I ended up working in the not-for-profit and social enterprise sector, and then worked with tech startups in the entrepreneurship world, and then came back to consulting as well. You know, if you have this lack of clarity, you might have written things like, I don't like my old job, but not necessarily knowing why. It's just like, I just don't like it, don't want to go back. Or, you know, something like a career wouldn't allow me to spend as much time with my family as I want. And it's just simply put is because you may have not had a chance to even know what it is that you want to do. And so I'll share an easy way in a minute about how you can figure out where your career restart strategy might start with as well. And then finally, this lack of community support. And I saw that there in the chat as well, which, you know, as disheartening as that is, it is a very real situation for a lot of us as we do any kind of change in our lives as well. And so a lack of community support, whether that's professionally or personally, depending on the reason why you had to opt out of the workforce, the relationships you have kept potentially from old workplaces, the situation that you are in now, because your current reality is different to where you were before. And so it is a completely different ballgame. So, you know, returning to work, while it's highly satisfying and such a great choice for many families, it may not be an easy transition. And so not only do you have to transition, so do your kids if you have children, your partner, your friends, and your family. If you don't have the support from those in your community, both personally and professionally, it can feel even more challenging to return as well. And so when we think about these three challenges, I want to ask you three questions that gives you a bit of a, I guess, a bit of a gauge into how ready are you to come back to work. And the reason I want to do this is because, you know, you may be thinking about it, and it may be your confidence that might be stopping you as well. But I want to understand, you know, where is it that you may need to, or give you the awareness of where you may need to really hone in and find the answers to be able to support you with your career journey. And so the readiness questions that I want to ask you first is, firstly, how ready are you? Have a really honest think about your readiness to return to work. Is it 6 months from now? Is it a few years from now? Is it right away? Are you like itching to get back? How is your mindset? How ready is your mindset to get back to work? The second one I want you to think about is around your readiness around your career vision. So this time, like I said, is perfect to think about your career direction and your vision. Is it the same as before, or will it be a different industry as well? And then finally, around the support systems there, how ready are your support systems? So, is it realistic for you to return to work right now based on the responsibilities that you have? Do you have the resources for support, whether it's daycare or after school care, or people to help you with your caring responsibilities, or even your home or other commitment responsibilities that you might have? For those that had a break due to non-caring responsibilities or reasons, is it realistic for you to return to work based on the reasons for your career break? So, for example, if your career break was for a health reason, do you feel sufficiently recovered to resume working? Or if your career break was for extended travel, given that we haven't doing much travel now, but maybe you want to, given that things are starting to open up. Are you ready to maybe hold off the travel for a moment and come back to work? So these questions just kind of gauge that readiness to think about, okay, where are the gaps in where I need to get started for this return to work journey? And so we're going to go into each one of these challenges at a high level. And the first one that I wanted to share with you and give you a little bit of an activity to do after this session as well, but I'm going to share with you now that will give you an insight to this one here around lack of clarity. So if you're someone that is thinking about a professional pivot, or maybe moving into a different industry, or perhaps it's even moving back to the same industry, but you're not actually sure what is available, what is out there, what kind of role that you actually may want to go into, this activity will be a great way to think about and to find the words and the kind of areas where you can start to look for different resources, different courses, different people to support you on this return to work journey as well. Cool. I'm just I see a question that's come through the question and answer box, and I'm going to answer this one now because I think it's a great one before I go into this. And this is the question that's asked: how did you justify a constant pivot to a potential employer back then? Have you ever seen as someone who wasn't sure of herself, hence the constant pivot? So what I will do, I wanted to answer this, but I just realized that I am going to be answering this a little bit later on. But what I will say now, just to kind of precursor this answer as well, is no, it actually hasn't been seen as a disadvantage. And I'll tell you why, is because, when we think about our lives and we think about the generation that we are in now, our parents' generation, maybe even our grandparents' generation, they were the generation that would have a job for 30 years and live, retire, stay in the same company for 30 years, and that was it. Because of job security, financial stability, they would have the opportunity to maybe move up within the same company as well. What's happened now, particularly as technology has emerged and evolved and infiltrated all parts of our lives, whether it's work or play and socially, it means that, one, you are having jobs that do not exist right now. And so the future of work is absolutely changing. And more so is that people are realizing that from a personal perspective, that work is only one part of their identity and their actual life. So if they don't find the purpose and the meaning and the fulfillment and the value from the work that they get within an organization, there is always the opportunity to move, and you always bring experiences from each one of these different things into your next role as well, whether that's a career break or not. And so what I have found is that, when I think about the last 10 years for myself, I started in consulting. I left consulting 10 years ago and I'm consulting now. In that time, and I'll share a diagram later on in that, is that we think of career as this kind of step ladder, but it's a little bit of this kind of squiggle. In the 10 years that I left my last consulting job and came back into consulting, I've worked in social enterprise, not-for-profit. I've run my own business. I've worked with tech startups. I've worked with impact investing. I've worked with First Nations people. And all of those experiences has given me a worldview that is so beneficial and valuable into the work that I currently do now. And so, you know, having these different experiences allows you to, one, fulfill your own personal values, depending on what they are, but gives you the experiences that are valuable to bring into the organization that you want to move into as well. I'll talk about that a bit more, but thank you so much for your question. It's such a great one. So for those that are thinking about, you know, how do I start this career journey and feeling a bit overwhelmed about where do I go and have that bit of lack of clarity, this is a really simple but powerful exercise just for you to be able to do right now. So I'm not going to get you to do it right now on the call, but take a screenshot of this slide, or you'll be able to refer back to this in the recording as well. But after this call, I want you to have a think about what is the dream job that you would like to have and who has that, even if it is not attainable for you right now. And so, and have a look at their career path. So on LinkedIn, it's such a great place to see people who are doing really, really good things. And LinkedIn is a place where I highly encourage you to be. It is not the LinkedIn of, you know, the 10 years ago when I started doing LinkedIn in my professional career. I kind of think of it as like Facebook, but like 10 years ago type of thing. It's much more sociable and really great for connecting with people personally and professionally. So I want you to have a look up on LinkedIn, the profile of someone who has your dream job. And no, you're not necessarily looking for people who have returned to work. These could be people who haven't had a career break. But the reason I want you to do this is so you can study their career path. What did they do in order to be able to move into that role? And then take their title or keywords from it and study those LinkedIn profiles for more career examples. So there's a search bar, you can search through that as well. When you look at those people, you can have a look at job descriptions and then put those job descriptions in something like TagCrowd, or we've got free word cloud generator. If you just pop them in there, it'll actually pull out what are the main keywords that are relevant for that particular job. And then if you take that and put that back into LinkedIn, you'll start to see roles that might be relevant for you as well. It's not a perfect science, but what it means, you might see some additional roles that look really interesting to you as a result. And then finally, what I would suggest is, you know, actually reach out to that person that has that dream job for you and let them know that you actually aspire to a role just like theirs in the future. And see if you can ask them about how did they get there. And, you know, understand it's possible that the person might actually say no, or you might not be able to contact them, but it is fine for you to do that. That is what LinkedIn is for. It's a professional network, and you can reach out to people to do that. I'm just going to pause there for a second to take some water. But I know this might still feel quite overwhelming for you as well. If you don't know what your dream job is, Deep, that is such a great question. What I would suggest for you to do is to think about another way of doing it is on a piece of paper, put down a list. What are all the things that you like to do? What are all the things that you don't like to do? And then in another list, put all the things that you would maybe like to do, but you haven't had a chance to try them yet. And see if there are any themes or overlaps with these different things that come out as well. And we go into this a little bit more in our future webinars as well. But for you, if you're thinking about what your dream job is, you know, you might think about what are your passions, what are your values, what are the things that really interest you as well. And for me, like, for example, diversity and inclusion has always been part of my life. I've advocated for that, whether it's in a professional sense or personal sense. So it made sense for me to look for roles that were part of that passion of mine. And so that's how I started doing it, as well as like, what is out there? Who's doing good stuff in this, in the industry for this passion of mine? Who else is out there? Who can I talk to as well? But I know we haven't got a huge amount of time, so I'm going to let you to do that. And if you've got any further questions around how do I find what is the right role for me, please feel free to join our SheReturns platform, and I'll have more of a chance to answer your questions into that platform as well. Many jobs in one. Perfect. So just to start with, what is the definition of confidence? So many, but really, if we simply think about it, confidence is being the best you can be and believing you can succeed. And working on your confidence is one of the very first steps you can take in your return to work journey. And it is very important. It's one of those really hard things to really grab and to go, how do I become more confident? That is something you'll only be able to feel inside. But the reason why we say it's important is because confidence is required for action. And when you're thinking about all the things that are going to be keeping you stuck and stopping you and holding you back from moving forward in your career journey and your return to work journey, when you start to have that confidence and that belief in yourself, you're more likely to take action. So why do we feel a lack of confidence? And, you know, when we think about it, it's usually because we're trying something new. So we're getting back into the job market, you know, so much has changed potentially. You know, might feel like it's high stakes to us when it feels like your future depends on it. So you can either get the financial security or the financial freedom that you desire. Or you might be facing adversity. So you might feel like you're in a little bit of a power struggle. Other people might have more power than you. And so you feel these are all situations where you feel like you might have a lack of confidence. And these are all situations that are very common as well when you are thinking about this return to work journey as well. So I'd love to, when you're thinking about some of the times that you might feel like a lack of confidence, I've put some here on this list, and you know, you can see here feeling too old, or maybe networking, maybe reviewing job descriptions, figuring out those transferable skills to new jobs. But I'd love to hear and see if you can put it in the chat. Which one do you resonate with on this list? Or perhaps is there something else where you feel specifically a lack of confidence when you're thinking about your return to work journey? I'll just give you a moment to do that while I take some water. Feeling old, potentially not good enough. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, TJ. Practical things, created a PowerPoint presentation in 9 years. Yep. All of them. Yep. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, it's a little bit like that, isn't it? Too senior, lack of network. Yep. Yeah, thinking about that new work-life dynamic, like what is that going to look like? Yeah, feeling too old, figuring out those transferable skills. Yeah, absolutely. It's a new industry. Yeah, okay, that's very specific. Thanks, Gracie, for that one. Yeah, right after rejection in an interview, after interview. Yeah, when you've heard a few no's, yes, that can definitely put a dent in your confidence as well. A little bit of everything. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, many of us choose to take a break from our professional careers thinking it is a bit of a pause and not a full stop. But, you know, once you have been away from the workforce, it can feel a bit daunting to regain and to think about this next chapter as well. And it's a major life transition. And so when you think about returning to a life that was once familiar, it can actually bring about that little bit of anxiety and fear and a little bit of unease that we talked about there. And I can see here, you know, that everyone's got those little moments of where they might feel that lack of confidence. And so our research showed that there's not only a general anxiety over the transition, but also things about like not being able to use their skills, like the PowerPoint for 9 years, for example. I mean, unless, you know, you've had to, if you're like my kids and do PowerPoint presentations on why we should have another animal, which I'm just like, you know, let's just get another one. Or, you know, being able to use your abilities in the same way. These are things that can really bring up that kind of anxiety as well. But I want you to know that you are not alone. As you can see here in the chat, a lot of you feel very similar to each other. And in fact, I'm resonating with all of you that have put this out. I was only out of the workforce, and I say only, for 4 years, but it felt like a lifetime, particularly in an industry that was so fast paced that I felt like I had lost all my skills. I had no idea what I was going to actually do, the value that I was able to bring to the workforce. Feels like a punishment that I chose my family, and now my experience and skills are not recognized by the organizations. Yes, I hear that one a lot, but I'm going to share with you some ways you can start to reframe some of these thoughts that you've had, that you're having now. And what I will caveat this by saying it is a practice, and it will get better, but I'm going to share with you a bit of a framework of how you can start to reframe some of this as well. So I want you to think about this quote that's here on the screen. Your life is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. And when we think about the barriers that are in our way on any kind of change journey, so whenever we're trying to do anything different in our life, so this is not just applicable to returning to work, but if we want to maybe go on a health kick, like I'm trying to lose weight because of those COVID kilos, and that's hard because I like my chocolate very much, but it's very much applicable to that. Any kind of change that you're trying to make into your life, it can be really hard to feel how are you going to achieve this? The vision that we have can seem really unattainable and really overwhelming. And we need to recognize what are those barriers that we can influence and what are the ones we can't. So those mindset beliefs, our thoughts, they're the ones that we can actually do something about. And so it's really important that we first recognize and have awareness of our thoughts that are coming in the way and actually holding us back as well. So when we're thinking about confidence, where this relates to confidence, we've talked about what it means and how it shows up for us. And I've seen in the chat how it might hold you back. Knowing that confidence is being the best you can be and believing in yourself. How do we start to do that? How do we start to believe in ourselves a little bit more? And so I want to share this framework with you. And this is really just to give you an understanding. How does it actually hold us back? So if you think about it, our thoughts, they're the stories we tell ourselves. It impacts how we feel about ourselves. And then those feelings actually impact the actions that we take. Whether we feel positive or negative, it's going to impact what action do we take or not take. And when we have these emotions also affect our thoughts and our actions, right? So when we are feeling really disheartened by hearing those no's all the time, for example, those thoughts start spiraling in our head around, I'm not good enough, right? Or I'm too old, or I don't think I can do this, all those thoughts. And then what happens is it then influences those actions again. And so we get stuck in this little bit of a vicious cycle around it. So if we want to be able to start taking action and to build confidence to take that action, where do you think we need to start first? Where is it? Thoughts, actions, emotions, what do you think? Where do you think you can have the most influence over as well? Thoughts? Yes. Oh, gold star for everyone. Yes, thoughts, of course. If we can change our beliefs, we can change how we feel about ourselves, which will then change our actions. So any kind of change you want to have in your life, if you think about what it is that we want to do, is all made up of really tiny actions. And those small actions lead to that big change. So if we want to be able to feel more confident, sometimes you can fake it till you make it. But I really like to think of it a way as, instead of faking till you make it, let's be it until we believe it. And the only way we can do that is by starting here and actually changing some of the thoughts that we have. So how can we do this? How can we flip some of these negative thoughts, the inner critic that we have, how can we flip it into a way that's more positive? And I'm going to ask you to help me with some of these that are the most common ones that come up. So here's a thought that we hear all the time. I've been out too long. I'm unemployable. My skills are no longer relevant. How would you reframe this? How would you reframe this into a more positive way? And pop it into the chat if you like. How would you reframe this one into a more positive thought? I'll give you now 30 seconds to maybe pop that in. And if you can't think of anything right now, that's totally fine, because I'll share with you how we can do that as well. But I'd love to hear from you first. How would you change this? What would you say to yourself instead? There is a way to apply my existing skills, which I still need them. Yeah, I have gained X, Y, Z new skills. Skills are still relevant. I have gained valuable skills. I'm wise and there are skills that I can transfer. Oh, I love all of these coming through. I just needed to give you a bit of time. Amazing. Yes. Amazing. You guys are pros at this. So good. So what I want to say is time away isn't time wasted. You know, we think about our lives and work is a big part of our lives, but it's not all of our life. So time away from the workforce isn't time wasted. And as human beings, the experiences we have as humans all make up part of who we are and our experience, our collective experience as well. Everything you learned before and you did before a career break is still relevant. What you have been doing in that career break adds to these abilities. They don't go away, it adds to them. You're actually more relevant now because of your career gap and the life experiences that you have had. All the life experiences does, it enhances your ability to get the job done. Focus on the advantages. What do you have now that is going to be an asset to an organization? You've got the maturity now. So compared to someone, so if you were in a marketing role, for example, you took a career break and you come back into a marketing role, if that's what you want to do, you have the maturity of life to be able to say and to mentor younger people coming into the organizations, because the foundations of marketing don't necessarily change. You'll bring a new perspective into an organization, what we call the outsider advantage. You'll be able to see things differently because of the life experiences that you have, that people that have been there for quite a while have become so ingrained to that way of working that they may not be able to see it unless a fresh pair of eyes take a look at it. You bring new energy and a new vibe into an organization because of those life experiences, and you bring new skills as well that you have learned outside of that. So if you think about people who have just gone through that, all of the experiences that you've had, whether it's in that industry or a completely in different industry, or whether it's through your own personal life, are going to be so valuable to bring new innovation and ideas to that organization. So believe in yourself. Remember, you were great before and will add value. Keep learning and be interested. So what about this one? It won't be possible to juggle the needs of my family and work. How would you reframe this one? How would you reframe this one? I'll give you 30 seconds to do this. I need to work on my support system to now move back to go to work. Yes, thanks, Shishmita. Adapt it again. I can adapt it before and I can do it again. Yes, thank you, Saras. Perfect. Let's give you another 10 seconds if you want to add that in. This is the one you struggle with. Yes, I know. It is. It's a hard one. The mental load is real. And we know that women still play quite a dominant role in caregiving, even when we're working outside of the home. So it is a hard one. Don't have to juggle them perfectly. You're only human. Yes. Yes. How can I make more use of resources available to me? Love it. Love it. Thank you so much. And I know it's a hard one. You know, and like I said, while these challenges are still really true, it is changing. And not only in society and work, but within workplaces as well. The landscape of flexible working has changed for the better. Like, what did you do when stuff didn't get done? When you think about that. And that could have been, maybe you were ill and you couldn't actually do that before, where you had to, and you had to take yourself out of the equation. What did you do then? So when we think about, particularly if we've been taking some time, you know, looking after small children or caregiving responsibilities, we've had those responsibilities there. What sometimes happens is that it's something we've potentially created ourselves. Now, what happens in these opt-out years is that we've entered into a really defined role, and there is some unwinding that needs to be happening. So we need to be transitioning this identity that we had when we were having this career break into a new identity as well, into a professional identity. Doesn't mean that they are different. It's just adding a different dimension to who you are. And so what that means is that this identity, this old identity or this previous identity, requires a little bit of adjusting as well. So it's an evolved identity. That's what I was trying to say here as well. So there are things that you can potentially start to do or stop to ensure that your home and the people that you love are taken care of, and that you're also doing work that you enjoy. So what is one thing that you can start to do? What is one thing you can stop? And what is one thing that you continue to do as well that you really want to be part of? So for me, I ensure that I do school pickup and drop off for my kids. That is something that's really important to me. And I tag team with my husband on certain days. But for me, being able to drop them off to school and pick them up is important. So I look for roles that allow me to be able to do that. So for me, that also means is I don't have meetings at 9 a.m. because I'm not back in time by then as well. So these things have allowed me to add in parts of my life so that I can continue those things that are important to me as well. The landscape of flexible working has changed over the last 2 years, and many employees have moved to this hybrid working kind of experience. So the conversation around flexible working is so much more normalized than it was when I started working, when I had my kids as well. So don't be afraid to ask. Ask for the things that you need in order to be able to keep the priority and the balance of the things that you actually want to do. And for those other things, what are the supports that you need to be able to manage that as well? And that's going to look different for everyone. And also, I just want to let you know, be kind to yourself. And I loved how someone said that. It's like, I don't have to do it perfectly. I'm only human. And so for me, that means letting go of a few things as well. Put in place, accept and ask for help. Drop the desire for perfection. We are human. The second last one that I wanted to share with you, I'm too old. No one wants to hire someone my age. I feel this one a lot. Love to hear, how would you reframe this? How would you reframe this? Bringing lots of life experience and maturity. Yep. And see, very similar kind of things. So here's the fact: you are not too old. Next. Many people have returned to great jobs in their 50s and 60s after breaks, as long as 15 to 20 years. And while it's true, ageism is a bit of a challenge, don't let yourself buy into that story. You are not too old. You can't fix it overnight, but you can definitely fix how you respond to that. Remember the maturity part of what you do. So when you make the decision to return to work after an extended career break, remind yourself that you have a wealth of experiences and strengths that you have acquired from both your career history and your career break that can really add that value to the organization. Age isn't a factor when you make it really clear that you are still looking for challenges and opportunities to test your intellect and your ability and bring your experience into it. So, some of the things that you've done prior to career break. So an example, dealing with challenges during the 2008, 2009 financial crisis won't have been experienced by many in the market now as we start to think about potentially going into a recession again. If you were working at that time, what did you do? What can that experience, can you bring from that will help organizations and teams now to bring into that? And that's only someone can provide that they've lived through that as well, right? So, and then finally, the last one here is I won't be able to get to grips with new technology. I'm not going to ask you to reframe this because I know we're almost at time, but I wanted to share with you just how we would reframe this. Industries are actively looking for non-technical skills and investing into women and providing the right structure and support needed to upskill. And also if you're like, for example, I think Raylene put it in the chat, haven't used PowerPoint for 9 years. It's okay. That's something that can be learned. There's a lot of free tutorials and things that are out there. But when you think about new technology, as a consumer, you know how it works. You are a consumer of apps, right? So, and platforms already. So think about what you already use. Maybe it's Netflix, maybe it's TikTok or social media, LinkedIn. You know how to use them. So these are things, they're going to be different for every organization, but it's something that can be learned. And any kind of new technology, don't get me started on TikTok. I'm not going to be on that. But if I had to be, I could learn it. And so give yourself the opportunity to learn new things, but know that you actually can pick up things much more quicker than you actually expect to as well. Finally, I just wanted to share this with you, and I'm not going to go through this because I know we are at time, but I'm going to leave this up here again so that you have this in the recording and then you can come back to this. But when you are thinking about returning to work and you want to answer that question, what do you do? Or, when you're talking about, tell me about yourself, those types of interview questions, we have a strategy called the career break sandwich. And when you're putting together your story about how do you talk about your career break, you put it in the middle. So start about what you did with your working life before, then talk about your career break, but avoid apologizing for it or justifying your break or spending too much time talking about what you've been doing. It's like, I had a career break, I took time off to have kids, or, I was prioritizing my health, or I was looking after my parents in that time, or whatever it is what you wanted to do. It's part of your working history. It doesn't have to overshadow it as well. But do include any kind of study or voluntary work or time spent abroad, any kind of unusual or challenging activities, or anything that you feel might be interesting in terms of skills development or updating to a possible employer. And then finish with, what are you looking to do now in your career and why? And so the question that had about how did you justify working so many careers, this is part of how I did it as well. So whether that was a career break or whether I worked in different industries, I told my story about what I was doing in there, what I got out of it, what I learned, but then what am I actually looking for now? And that has never been a problem for me when I have been interviewing as well. People love to hear stories, one, but also they like to see, what have you gained from that experience and how can that be applied to the role that you want to go for now? And then finally, I just want to end with this. This is from a book called The Squiggly Career. Career pathing doesn't always have to be vertical, and be embracing, for those that have taken career breaks, we are embracing a squiggly career. And what it means is it's not everyone's goal to climb up the ladder in a way. And in fact, even if that is your goal, it is a little bit like this, just because life is like this. So career paths can look so different for every one of us. Ask yourself, what is it we really want from my career? Break those traditional expectations of what might be expected from us as well, and have the agency and the empowerment to define your own career pathway. I personally am exploring what we call a portfolio career, which means I do lots of little things because that's what I enjoy. I don't do one thing at all. And the reason why I say this is 1/3 of your life is spent at work, which is the average person will spend something like 90,000 100,000 hours of work over a lifetime. So if you think about that, a career break is just a blip in the career lifetime. So don't feel like that it's going to hold you back. There are so many advantages that you can bring into your new chapter and into your new career as well, no matter what that looks like for you. And I want you to embrace the squiggliness of your career and know that the path that you take now may actually lead you to something brighter and better for the future. Remember, your journey is your own, and even if it doesn't feel like it, you are making progress. So I'm going to finish there because I know we are a little bit over time, but if you do have any other questions or you want to connect with myself or our team at the Dream Collective, if you want to connect with organizations that we are working with that are looking for women who have had career breaks and have either a returnship programs or direct supported hire programs, come and join us here as well. Thank you so much for being such great participants. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see my face a little bit more as well. Please feel free to join the SheReturns platform. You'll get to connect with each other again. The recording will be sent out as well. If there is anything else, please feel free to reach out to us at the Dream Collective or to Kate there at General Assembly. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you do enjoy the rest of your day as well. Amazing. Take care, everyone. See you later.